From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Sportsline.
Hey there, Titans Talk on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night, a victory Monday for the Tennessee Titans. A huge win over the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday that was as thorough as it was surprising. 27-3, the final at Nissan Stadium. And you just have to give the Titans a lot of credit. I mean, I think back to this time last week. We were just barely underway against Buffalo. And the talk was really based off of what you had seen so far from the Titans through the first 5 games of the season. What had you seen that made you believe that they could beat either of these so-called AFC contenders? That they could win either against the Bills or against the Chiefs in this very difficult sort of middle of the season stretch for the Titans. And they go out on Monday night and they beat the Bills. Great second half from the offense, the huge goal line stand or fourth down stand near the goal line late by Jeffrey Simmons and crew, and they get a win there. And then they come back 6 days later, and everybody's wondering, okay, short week, taking on one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, former MVP Patrick Mahomes, a quarterback for the Chiefs. Titans have struggled on the back end for not just the start of this season, but for several years now. How would they be able to match up? Could they slow them down at all? Would they have any chance to win another game against one of the AFC's quote-unquote premier teams? And what do? They go out and they absolutely dominate. You have to give the Titans a ton of credit for how they handled these 2 games, how they stepped up to the competition, and they delivered. And now with back-to-back wins, they are 5-2. They've got their first 3-game winning streak in over a calendar year, 2 games up in the AFC South, headed to Indianapolis this weekend with essentially the chance to lock up the division before the end of October. On Halloween, they could beat Indianapolis and go to 6-3, 3 full games up on the Colts, essentially at the midway point of the season. That is the position the Titans have put themselves in with these back-to-back wins. And more importantly than even that, I think, is the way that they played in these games. If you had high expectations for this Titans team coming into the year, you finally saw in the last week glimpses of what you thought that they could be. It wasn't there all the time. It wasn't there every play against the Bills and the Chiefs. But finally, 6-7 weeks into the season, we got glimpses of what we imagined this team might be able to look like. And we saw it starting in the second quarter against the Bills from an offensive standpoint, and it carried right through the first half yesterday. Derrick Henry ran like a madman against Buffalo. Another huge 100-plus yard game, 3 touchdowns. Well, he comes back yesterday, and the Chiefs do everything they can to try to sell out and stop him. And so what do the Titans do? It's the old pick your poison. They go to the air. They get A.J. Brown and Julio Jones involved in the passing game early on. Ryan Tannehill, who completed his last 9 passes against the Bills as the Titans kept scoring late in that game to come back and win, completed his first 11 passes yesterday against the Chiefs. The Titans scored on their first 5 possessions yesterday. And if you go back to that Bills game and you eliminate out a kneel down at the end of the first half and a kneel down at the end of the game when it was over. If you take those 2 kneel downs or those 2 possessions out, the Titans scored on 11 consecutive drives against 2 of the AFC's premier teams. Now, the Bills have a good defense. The Chiefs do not. And let's not confuse those 2 things. But still, I don't care who you are or who you're playing. When you're scoring every time you step on the field, you are humming as an offense. And the Titans proved that they could do it with the run against the Bills. They proved they could do it with the pass against the Chiefs. And that was really the first time this year. Thank heavens Henry has run as well as he has. But that's really the first time this year that the Titans have had to rely on the pass and said, okay, the Derrick Henry thing. And by the way, it wasn't like he was awful yesterday. He ran for 86 yards. but on 29 carries. There were none of the big chunk plays, certainly none of the home run plays that you're so used to seeing from Derrick Henry, and why he gets 130 and 140 yards week in and week out. They just didn't get that yesterday. But they still had his presence on the field, and you got to see what A.J. Brown and Julio Jones can look like when they're healthy. Jones, I still don't think, is anywhere near 100% with that hamstring, but he was able to give them something, especially early on as they built that lead. He had a couple big catches that helped them set up touchdowns. And A.J. Brown, I don't know if he's completely over the food poisoning, but it sure looked like it. And whatever he ate this weekend needs to go into the ritual category for A.J. Brown, because he had 8 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown. I know he was good against the Bills, but he was fantastic yesterday against the Chiefs. And that is what you need to see from this team, because we all thought at the beginning it was going to be kind of that three-headed monster, and Ryan Tannehill's job was just going to be to distribute the football to Henry, to Brown, to Jones, to the other guys. And yesterday we saw it. And credit to Todd Downing, by the way, at the beginning of the game for getting those guys involved. First play of the game, it's play action, A.J. Brown. Second play of the game, similar look, Derrick Henry run. Third play of the game, play action, Julio Jones. You've got those types of weapons. Get them involved in the script. Get them a part of the game early on. And I don't think it's a huge surprise that for the first time all season long, that script led to an opening drive touchdown for the Titans. 8 plays, 75 yards, and the Titans are on the board first. And oh, by the way, your best players feel involved in the game. Henry got touches. A.J. Brown got touches. Julio Jones got touches. The offense was in rhythm at that point. That's been one of the issues. And again, injuries have been a problem for all of these guys except for Henry. They've had to fight through things that I think is why we haven't seen maybe what we expected until the last 2 games from this group early on in the season. But the Titans were struggling with slow starts, getting off to a quick start, getting in that rhythm early on. Yesterday, that was not a problem, and I think you have to give offensive coordinator Todd Downing a lot of credit about that. Great start from the offense. Great game from the defense. They were absolutely phenomenal yesterday against Patrick Mahomes and that vaunted Chiefs passing attack. The front 4 got home. They got 4 sacks, which is actually more points than the Chiefs scored in the game. You saw Bud Dupree, a guy they brought in to bring pressure this year. He brought it yesterday. He was active. He was a part of the pass rush. And, of course, he's been dealing with injuries early on in this season as well. But he got home yesterday, and he was an impactful player. The most important signing the Titans had this offseason was Denico Autry, the former Colt. He has been a man-child on the field for the first 7 games of the season. No difference yesterday when he had 2 sacks. Jeffrey Simmons has been an impactful guy. He obviously had the huge 4th down stop against the Bills. He was good again yesterday. So you get those guys involved up front. They're rushing the passer. Harold Landry has another sack. He's now got 7.5 for the season. The linebackers were active. Rashaan Evans had an interception. David Long continues to fly around the field and make plays. And credit to this secondary, because they were without a safety in Amani Hooker, who had a groin injury and was a scratch late in the week. And they were without Christian Fulton, the cornerback, who's on injured reserve. So they had to go to the backups in the secondary to face Patrick Mahomes in that Chiefs passing game. And those guys held up. Great defensive game plan from Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen. And those guys executed it to a T. Just 4 first downs allowed in the first half. 2 turnovers caused against Mahomes in the first half, 3 total for the game, 4 sacks. They only allowed the Chiefs to convert 4 of 11 third downs. I mean, these are impressive numbers. And that third down stat, let's not forget, it was a year ago that the Titans were one of the worst third down defenses, if not the worst third down defense in the history of the NFL. Now they're slowing down the Chiefs on third down. That is a huge difference, and it comes somewhat from the scheme, comes somewhat from that back end. Kevin Byard is playing incredible. Jack Rabbit Jenkins has been a plus addition to the secondary, and guys have played their role, and they've played it pretty well for the most part. for the Titans in pass coverage. But the biggest thing you look for there is that pressure up front. And yesterday in particular, they were able to get it with 4 guys. They were able to get it with the pass rush and the front 4. It didn't have to come from a blitz. It didn't have to come from a disguised pressure or somebody coming from an interesting spot that the Chiefs weren't expecting. It was just the down linemen, the outside linebackers getting after Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offensive line. And look, the Chiefs offensive line is not good. It is a real concern for a team that now has a losing record 7 games into the season after being in the last 2 Super Bowls. The Chiefs are going to struggle, especially in the division they are in, the West, where the Raiders look good, the Chargers look really good. The Chiefs are going to struggle to be a wild card team this year because of the schedule in front of them and the way they have started. But also because the offensive line just isn't good. The only other game that they did not score double digits in the Patrick Mahomes era was the Super Bowl just last February. And in that game, remember, the Chiefs had offensive line issues because of injuries. They had a bunch of backups in there, and the Bucs pass rush absolutely gave Mahomes nightmares. He was on the run that entire game. When he did complete passes, he looked like Superman trying to do it against that Bucs defense. And I thought at the time, and I think it's been verified now, that the Chiefs made a horrible miscalculation in the offseason as they tried to boost up that defense a little bit more and keep the skill position players they had for Mahomes. They allowed key members of that offensive line who were going to be pricey, yes, they allowed them to walk in free agency this offseason. They tried to make cheap replacements for them. That has not worked out well at all. And right now you see a Patrick Mahomes who has as many interceptions through 7 games this year as he had all of last season. That is a function of the offensive line not doing the job in front of them. And credit the Titans for getting after them and understanding, frankly. This is a team that has not had a great pass rush over the last few years. It's been a little bit better in recent weeks, but understanding that these guys are coming into their own, you add Dupree back into the mix, and that they were going to be able to get home and get pressure without having to bring blitzes. And that allowed them to put 7 guys in coverage on the back end. That game plan was beautiful against Mahomes and the Chiefs, and it got the job done yesterday. It was a comprehensive win for the Titans, and it announces them as a legit AFC contender. The Bills are still good. I think the Ravens are great. What the Bengals did yesterday was impressive by beating the Ravens in Baltimore. As I mentioned, you got a couple teams out west in the Raiders and Chargers that are off to good starts this season. But the Titans are going to win this division, so you know they're going to be in the playoffs. And if they play the way they've played these last 2 weeks, they can be a factor in January, and they can potentially get to L.A. and the Super Bowl if they continue to play like that. And that, I think, is the most exciting thing. It's not just that they beat the Bills. It's not just that they beat the Chiefs, but it's the way they did it. Winning kind of a shootout game against Buffalo, having the defense have to come up with a big stop there, the offense driving the field multiple times in the fourth quarter to come from behind and win against a team of that caliber, and then a dominant performance against Kansas City. A performance where the offense got off to a fast start. You saw the different facets in the passing game of the offense when the running game wasn't able to go on all cylinders yesterday. And you saw a defensive performance that was elite. This offense can find another gear yet. And I think we expect, if they get healthy, that that can happen. What no one was expecting at all from this defense was for it to be good itself. We just hope that it could be average based off of what they did last year. Yesterday was a good performance. If they can build off of that, and oh, by the way, what they did against Buffalo, yes, I know they gave up 31 points, but to hold them in the red zone a couple of times as they did in that game. Yesterday, the Chiefs were 0 for 3. This red zone defense and the new and improved ability to get off the field on 3rd down gives the Titans a chance to be a good defense. Look, they're going to give up yards. They're going to give up points. But if they can hold teams to kicking field goals, that's a win. And when they get into those third down positions, if they can get a turnover or if they can get a sack, that's a win. That is a huge win in a league that is all about offense. And last year, the Titans couldn't do that. It was completely relying on the offense to come up with the goods, to have a great game, to score every possession. And while this offense may be capable at times to do what they did here and score 11 consecutive possessions, or at least 11 consecutive meaningful possessions, from the second quarter Monday night against Buffalo to halftime yesterday against Kansas City, that's an unrealistic thing. So if this defense can take it to the next level and give the Titans a pass rush, give the Titans a team or a unit that gets them turnovers and can get off the field on third down, now all of a sudden you're talking about a totally different football team. Not just a defense, but a football team that has a chance to compete and win the AFC this season. Want to get your thoughts tonight. Our phone lines are open, 737-7767. Were you at the game yesterday? Your thoughts on the impressive Titans win over the Chiefs? What do you make of how A.J. Brown and Julio Jones stepped up in the passing game? Any concerns about not having Derrick Henry at 130 or 140 yards yesterday? And what about that defensive performance? Where's this team go from here? Your thoughts. We welcome them. 737-7767. This is Titans Talk on News Channel 5+.